Strategic Planning, HSD 2025, just to get an update on where that group is at with that planning process. So we're back now, and before we go any further, what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to reinstate Robert's rules. We suspended the rules earlier so that we could have more of a freewheeling discussion during our work session. So I'll entertain a motion for.
So move.
We have a motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Cindy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. If you could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on. We already approved the agenda earlier, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of the September 25th, 2007 Board of Education meeting work session minutes and the November 13th, 2007 Board of Education regular and closed session minutes.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Minnick.
Second.
Second by Mark. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Correspondence. I believe we do have some correspondence. Cindy, you.
Yes, we do. There is a note from the parents of the Holton student who died from cancer recently, and it's just a thank you. And then there is a note from the school nurse who had surgery, also a thank you for flowers. And then a note from Superintendent Mary Bowenegger-Broughton thanking us for flowers also for the loss of a person, family member.
Thank you, Cindy. I think that's all the correspondence. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Mary?
We have an election coming up this spring. We have 3 seats up for election. The incumbent seats that are up for election are Dan Chernahoy's seat, Dick Minnick's seat, and Erica Cherrier's seat. Those 2 of those seats, Dan and Dick's seats, are 3-year seats, and then the 3rd seat is the final year of Tracy Habishaline's original seat. So what would happen is the first 2 candidates would take the 3-year terms, and then the 3rd candidate with the third most votes would take the final 1-year seat. And our candidates who are interested in declaring candidacy can pick up papers now in the superintendent's office during regular business hours, and they need to file those papers by January 2nd at 5 o'clock in my office. Incumbents who choose not to run for election need to file an incumbent notice of non-candidacy by December 21st. We would have a spring primary if we had more than 6 candidates for office. and the primary would be February 19th. And the spring election is scheduled for April 1st.
Thank you, Mary. Do you want to go on with the middle school space
Certainly.
for learning?
We've talked about one of our goals is about grades 6 through 12 long-term space for learning needs. And in preparation for next year, as you know, we have exceeded the capacity of the middle school already this year, and our numbers continue. We anticipate that they will be going up as well next year. So we need to look at a short-term space for learning at the middle school. As we did when we were looking for short-term solutions for the high school, which we have addressed by the district office moving out to the administrative service center. Again, that's a short-term solution. We are offering an opportunity to our community and hope they will take advantage of that to offer suggestions for short-term space relief at the middle school. That will probably go on our website by the beginning of next week and be available for people to comment from the community through the end of January.
Okay, thanks, Mary. We'll move on to reports. Before we do that, are there any questions for Mary? Okay. Reports, Rivercrest construction update. Mary, are you going to start?
Well, I'm going to start, yes. We're very pleased about the progress that we've made to date on the construction of Rivercrest. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to drive by and see the structure. We also thank the Hudson Star Observer for covering that and the beautiful pictures of the steel structures that were in the paper last week, I believe. Just very well done by Margaret Ontold, I think, who took those pictures. But really, if you haven't had the opportunity, I hope you'll take the time to look at those. I'd like to introduce to you our site supervisor from Hoffman, Kurt Teal, who's going to update us on the construction progress and then answer any questions that you may have.
Good evening.
Kurt, got it?
Got to get real close?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start with the foundation, and the foundations are 100% in and backfilled into grade, so the building is protected from frost. And we're proceeding with masonry. The masonry is up as far as the structure goes in probably 65 to 70% of the building, and we'll be completing area F, which is the one of the classroom wings that points to the southwest and or southeast, excuse me, and that'll be completed on Monday, so we'll be able to put roof structure on that wing sometime next week. We are putting the roof structure on wing E, which is the small center area, small classroom wing directly to the east. We have the roof structure on areas D and A, and we're presently waiting for roof insulation to get the roofer here, and that'll be an exciting milestone to put the roof on and then start pouring floors so we can move towards completion of finishes in those areas. And as the roof goes on, we'll be temporarily enclosing and heating those areas as I speak about, and things are going rather well. The mezzanine area is the floor is poured in underneath, and the walls that are able to be constructed are constructed. The mezzanine's ready for equipment. The floor is poured up in the mezzanine area, and even the walls are painted up there prior to getting equipment in the way and things. So we're about as far as we can go, waiting for that equipment to go, and that's really the nucleus of equipment in the building. So we'll go for there. We do have permanent power and permanent gas utilities to the building, so we'll be ready to hook those up when we get some floors and equipment in those areas. On the outside, you might be able to see we started putting the architectural features of the arched roofs. The first one started today, and we'll continue with that as wings become available for those, and it'll start adding some dimension to the building and start looking at some of those elevations that you've seen in previous presentations. In Area D, that we're the first one that we're going to put the floor in, the mechanical contractors have already started hanging pipe, the plumbers piping and the electrical piping, so we're trying to advance ourselves as quickly as possible so we can move towards finishes when we get those floors poured. So, and the steel structure, the roof decks, like I said, are going on E, and we're going to, you've seen the pictures that Mary mentioned with the structure of the gym. That roof, eave, and deck will start going on either late tomorrow or Thursday. So you'll see that getting covered, and then it'll become a big enclosed warehouse for our staging of materials. So that's about all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy
Are
to
there any
answer.
questions for Kurt?
No?
I have one, just as it relates to weather and snow and all that. Are you at a point now with, no matter what happens weather-wise, you're going to be able to proceed, or?
Well, we have a system of 4 enclosures that the masons use to sort of leapfrog to different areas. They're smaller. The progress of the masonry is slowed because we have to set up enclosures, heat the area,
Sure.
then put up the block. While they're working in there, erecting a wall, laborers are then again putting another enclosure up and heating it so they can keep moving around the site. So unless there's extremely high wind and those enclosures are, pulled apart by the wind, we do continue to work. Those enclosures are heated, and it's sort of odd to see guys come out for material and they're in T-shirts. So it's rather comfortable in there. So.
Okay, good. Any questions? All right, thank you, and keep
Okay.
up the good work.
All right. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kurt.
It's very exciting.
Okay, the next item is a preliminary proposal for the 0809 elementary school boundary changes. Nancy?
And I was going to say, if any of you who have your back to the screen, someone can take my seat. Okay. Okay. Tonight, the board will hear a report on the proposed changes in elementary boundaries for 2008-2009. The boundary changes are in response to the opening of our new Rivercrest Elementary School and also the continued elementary growth that we continue to experience. No action will be taken by the board until the January 8th board meeting. In review, on October 9th, the board adopted criteria, guidelines, and timelines for the changes in the boundaries. We are on time tonight with the proposed boundary changes, and our consultant will show you data which demonstrates to what we believe to be the extent possible at this point in time an adherence to the criteria and the guidelines that you adopted. After tonight, and actually as soon as tomorrow, the map of the proposed change boundaries will be put on our website for family viewing. And the first of 5 open house meetings will be held for elementary parents wanting to personally review the boundary map, and we'll have more detailed maps available for them to take a look at. And at that time, they can give feedback relative to their review of the changed boundaries. All of the feedback will be provided to our consultant and to the board before boundaries are finally adopted on January 8th. Before introducing our consultant, who will make the report, I want to thank a number of people who have assisted this process in some way. And first of all, over 50 elementary parents communicated with the district, mostly in writing, in response to a form that we provided, some by telephone, a few in person, and also by email. They have they have been informative, and they've been very courteous about their communications. I know how sensitive the boundary changes can be and what anxiety and concern they can create. But at the same time, how wonderful it has been to hear from our parents who care so deeply about the schools that their children currently attend, and also for me to know that all of our schools have high-quality teachers, the same challenging curriculum, and excellent leaders. And while some are older in construction than others, they are all well-maintained. So as sensitive as this process may be, we have much to celebrate about all of our schools and the new school we are about to open. I also am grateful to the following parent advisors who were recommended to me by the elementary principals. From Willow River, April Simmons and Corrine Schlepp. From E.P. Rock Elementary, Barb LaRock and Tracy Leffner. From Hudson Prairie Elementary, Julie Mathis and Sheila Motu. Holton Elementary, Mary Verton and Tim Miner. And from North Hudson Elementary, Lisa Schmidt and Lisa Townsend. While they cannot be blamed or congratulated for the actual changes in the boundaries because that wasn't their role, they have, though, however, given invaluable advice on what they have been hearing as common parent concerns. They've suggested some solutions. They've given guidance on our communications and our processes. They will be present at the open house events, several at each, and they will greet parents who come, and they will assist in answering their questions. I would also like to thank Dennis Darnold from the City of Hudson, planner, Dave Ferdosi and Ellen Denzer from St. Croix County Planning and Zoning, and also Gail Qualls, a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the town of Hudson. While none of them have a crystal ball, all were as helpful as they could possibly be about future growth and development in the Hudson School District. I will be checking back with them again before the January 8th board meeting, but I am grateful for the help that they have been given to this process. I would like to recognize also the elementary principals and the other district administrators. Again, they're not responsible for the drawing of the boundaries, but they have given all along helpful input and feedback. The elementary principals care as deeply about their schools as their parents do, and they want to welcome new parents and their children, as well as help those who might be moving to a new school. Tracy Habib-Shaleen, our district communications specialist, prepared the parent communications and made sure that they got out in a timely fashion. And then lastly, but not least, Monica Bulla, our transportation specialist. She knows every road in the school district, and she truly is a watchdog for our students' safety and the efficiency of our student transportation. So she worked pretty closely with our consultant to assure that the boundary decisions would align with the requirements of our law and our policy. I'd like to introduce at this time Joanne McKay, who is Manager Software Support and through the Demographic Department of Education Logistics, and she'll tell you more about herself, her company, the process that was used, and she will share our report with you. Joanne?
On the side of the microphone.
You can have this one.
I want to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
Hi. Just give a little background on Education Logistics. The company has actually been around for 30 years. At our annual conference this year in Las Vegas, we're having a big celebration, celebrate 30 years. I personally have been with the company for 17 years. Started as the secretary, believe it or not. Ooh. And then started in the software shortly after that. Over the last year, I've worked with many school districts from Tacoma, Washington, to Evansville, Indiana. Currently working with Auburn, New York, doing a boundary study as well. So I've done a lot of boundary studies. This project started, I guess I started working a couple months ago. The criteria that we use to look at the new boundaries, first of all, we look at capacity, the capacity of the buildings themselves. Here's a slide just showing you, I think everybody has a printout of that as well. You'll probably be able to see it better on your printout than you can on the screen. But to get right into the numbers, the first thing that we look at is capacity. We try to balance the schools based on the capacity, but obviously not going over the capacity. And as you can see here, we have our 6 elementary schools. The first column is listing the building capacity itself. The second one is the current 07 and 08 enrollment at each of those schools. And as you can see, all of them, except Holton, were over capacity. So there was a need to obviously have something done here. The next column is the proposed 08-09 enrollment. Okay, after the boundary changes that we made, those are the numbers we came up with. Pretty proud of those numbers. And then we also show the percentage of space for flexibility and future growth. Okay. You can see the larger schools have more room for growth, which is what we try to do. And also we look at potential growth areas as well. All right. This next chart shows the class guidelines and where we are with those new proposed boundaries. And as you can see, all of the schools fell within those guidelines. And if you have any questions along the way, just go ahead and interrupt me.
Joanne,
Yes?
excuse me, I guess since we're at this point, I guess I'll ask you. Pardon me. There you go. I just wanted to ask, you mentioned, building the capacity in the larger schools, Willow River, Prairie, Rock having, 20, or excuse me, not Willow River, but Prairie and Rock having 20% space available for future growth, and yet we have Holton also having 23%. Can you explain why, we have the smallest, why that school doesn't have a proportionally smaller percentage of growth
Do you want to take
as one?
I can take that one.
Sure.
That really comes from the guidance of our planners and their advice on the areas of potential growth existing within the school district of Hudson. They all advised that the 3 areas of growth were the town of Hudson and the township of Troy, and thirdly, St. Joe. And actually for different reasons and perhaps at different rates. But those are the 3 areas that could, given the right circumstances, all of a sudden take off for us. And so that caused us to provide for more space in those particular schools. Holton, you can see the capacity is relatively small in contrast to the other schools. And actually, that capacity probably wouldn't be sufficient if the town of St. Joseph really took off in its development several years from now, maybe, they say. So it does, in the meantime, provide some flexibility for its use, probably more than its ability later on to accommodate the growth that might happen up in that particular area. But Troy and the town of Hudson, Rivercrest, EP Rock, and Hudson Prairie would be affected profoundly by any rapid development, and there's so much of it that we were shown that is in various stages of development, mostly on hold right now because of the economy, truly, but things could turn around and be on our doorstep. So that's kind of the long response there.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Nancy.
The next thing that we looked at after our first criteria that we used was obviously balancing the schools, looking at the capacities. Once we had that done, then we started looking at the free and reduced lunch students and where they were located. We tried to then also balance based on those statistics. So that's kind of what you see here, obviously. And we felt that we did a better job, actually, of balancing within all of the schools for those free and reduced lunch students. Another criteria that we looked at was the English as a second language. We looked at those students. Although we did not modify boundary lines, it just kind of fell into place. So those numbers actually didn't change much.
And just let me say a little bit about that in particular. We really do think that it's of value to have diversity in our schools, and we're really glad to see the kind of distribution of our students who speak other languages and not English primarily. And that scatter was throughout the district. We couldn't have drawn our boundaries around them had we wanted to, because the scatter is pretty diverse. The free and reduced lunch statistics are a little bit more clustered, but we were able in some cases to make some adjustments in order to provide some greater degree of balance in our schools. But you can't do that perfectly. But I think we did it as well as we could. And again, there's value in having that kind of diversity in our schools as well.
And this next slide shows, again, we tried to balance the sections of classrooms. And you can see that with the boundaries that we are proposing, we would be adding only 3 teachers.
The qualification, just to make sure that that you notice it, one of the qualifications would be at the kindergarten level. We do not have a pre-kindergarten census to rely on, and so through this project, we used the current 5th graders who actually live right now in that attendance area, and comparing that number to the actual number of kindergartners this year, there was very little difference. But we will not know for sure until we have our kindergarten roundups. And then there may be, and you should know that there may be more sections of kindergarten that we might propose at that time. The bottom line, the additional 3 teachers, we anticipated, and had we not, I guess, over the last couple of years, been strategic about our short-term planning and provided additional teachers when class sizes exceeded the guidelines, and moved children to other attendance areas to balance those enrollments. And there are right now well over 100 children from Hudson within our district who are attending schools other than those they would ordinarily attend in order to balance those class sizes. So those short-term solutions allowed us, I think, to not all of a sudden need to add a considerable number of teachers when we also opened a new school. And at the same time, those students are placed here, there, here and there. And when you open a new school and you attempt to balance the enrollments, there's some economy of scale that you lose, so that you would need to add a few teachers at least. But this is at this point in time, this is the picture, and we think it's a pretty good one.
And there's another picture. It's just the same one, just to give you another glance at it.
And I'll just add that from a communication standpoint, then, we begin tomorrow offering the open house meetings with parents, and certainly we'll make you aware of their feedback, and we'll make our consultant aware of their feedback. We'll be very careful, and we have been all along, in making changes to the boundaries. And I'm saying that on behalf of Joanne, who's been changing the boundaries, because when you change one boundary, it affects another one. It's not a simple process. And then you find yourself, if you change one boundary, you have to go back and re-examine every single criteria again. You look again at the capacity of the building. You look again at the number of sections and the number of teachers that we would need additionally. You look again at the class size guidelines just to make sure everything is in sync. And we've done plenty of that along the way. But we would make you aware of that feedback. And again, there'll be more conversations with the planners. And you directed the administration to have another demographic study done, and that's in process. We'll be talking with them as well, and to see if that has any influence at all on these boundaries. We don't know if it will. But then we'll be back in January and ask you to adopt the boundaries. So if you have questions for either Joanne or I, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
I
Mark?
just had one more, Dan. It kind of probably goes without saying, because the boundaries don't look, radically different from, at least from my perspective. But I'm assuming that we don't have any issues with our target bus time of 1 hour for students. That these boundary changes haven't altered that significantly.
It has not.
Okay.
In fact, that was one of the criteria that we examined every inch of the way.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Now, that doesn't mean that, and part of our questions and answers to parents is that the bus ride will not exceed an hour. It might be shorter than it is today. It might be a little longer.
Okay.
Other questions? I think what struck me and possibly other board members was the number of additional staff. I would have guessed a larger number, so that really is. But it does go to show that, we've been involved in this planning process for some time, even though we haven't had the facility. I have a question just to draw on some of your historical experience, Joanne, in terms of, when you've integrated this data into your software, has it been pretty true in terms of how it's worked out with districts? Have there been some issues that you've run into along the way that, maybe we should have on our radar screen going forward that, we might potentially foresee down the road, or you've seen with other districts?
Actually, this one was pretty easy. It was pretty straightforward. It really was. I think we've kind of talked about some of the problems, some of the things we might run into. We used the criteria that was laid out, and so it was pretty straightforward one. I don't foresee problems. I really don't.
With the exception of the area that's proposed for Rivercrest, do you have any sense of the number of students that we expect to be changing schools as a result of this this distribution of the boundaries?
That is a really great question, and I don't know. But we will find that out. We will find that out. Certainly not everyone will be changing. And you can see that because you have in front of you the current boundaries. In fact, this particular map might be kind of helpful to you because it has the proposed boundary changes, and then superimposed in red lines are the current boundaries. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Do you have a sense for that?
Well,
maybe,
we do have those numbers, not right here, right now. But obviously, that's something that I try to do when I make the changes. Is I try to affect the least amount of kids. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So yes, we can get those numbers.
Have you had a sense of where I've read the questions that have come through emails or individual conversations from parents? Have you noticed, or have they come from a certain area more than another area of the district, a certain school area?
Yeah. I think primarily they have come from those people who were anticipated the new school, perhaps those that live south of I-94. Quite a few questions from parents of children who currently attend Hudson Prairie. I think being aware, with keeping up with what's happening in the district and realizing a new school was opening, I think there was a lot of anticipation that there would be considerable changes in the Hudson Prairie area, in the Rock area, and to some extent in Willow. Not so much from North Hudson or, the Holton communities. But those areas closest to the new school, they could see it, they could see that there might be some effect. So I think that would be the answer to your question there, Tom.
Dan, I have a question. The transportation, are we adding buses, and I think that's part and parcel to Rivercrest? Are we at that point to answer that?
I think that it would be safe to say that we will be adding, because we're opening a new school and, creating more geography in terms of our transportation. But we do not know yet. We just kind of worked out another timeline associated with the opening of Rivercrest, which involves transportation. For example, on January 8th, when you act on these boundaries, that current week, and at least by the beginning of the next week, we will be sending individual letters to all parents, informing them as to where their child would be attending school the following year. And at the same time, we will be attaching a form for transportation, which, when all of those forms are in, requesting transportation, because not all children who are eligible for transportation, not all of their parents ask for it. And so when all of that is in, and we're hoping that would be by the end of February, so Monica Bulla could begin to reroute, and she's going to have to reroute the whole district. She will reroute the whole district. and has anticipated some of that already because of the impact on boundaries, but she'll have to get down to that real finite business of rerouting. And it's at that time that we'll know whether additional routes will need to be added and whether that will entail additional buses, but probably.
Okay, thanks.
Dan, I have one other quick question. Just as long as Monica's here, I'm just curious, how many buses are we running right now? What's the number?
How many buses, Monica?
32.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to make one comment about the proposal that you see in front of you. It looks, the data is very clear. The process is clear, and really have to compliment. This is very comprehensive in the information that has been taken in to consider boundaries, and Nancy has led this effort. It is an all-consuming effort. She's been doing it almost 24 hours a day, working on this, thinking of other things, considering, looking at it again this afternoon. Joanne has been providing the support that has been extremely helpful in looking at this. And in the final analysis, the numbers came out the way we were hoping they would, which I think is a real compliment to the comprehensive nature of how this has been done and how it's moving forward to really inform parents, allow them to have the opportunity to express how they feel about that and have that considered, and then have the board take final action. So the whole process from beginning to end has really speaks to Nancy's expertise and her talents that we're very fortunate to have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, both of you, for the report, and you'll be coming back to us in January, take it. So if there's more questions, or we'll be able to bring those up again next month.
Good piece of work. A lot of good work done.
Okay, we'll move on to the online course update. Sandy?
Almost exactly a year ago, we were here to provide a presentation to the school board to begin our journey of online courses at the high school. We proposed offering some of our current courses through a different online delivery model. Tonight, we are here to provide you an update. With me to present are Nancy Toll, our technology coordinator, key to the training and support, she and her department. Lori Harmon, our very first online high school teacher of American Literature. And Ed Lucas is in the audience as well, principal at Hudson High School, and he plays a very instrumental role in working with the staff so that we can hopefully continue to grow that program from year to year. Oh, you guys are good. We made that work exactly right. Little transition there, you can see. I'll just begin with just a reminder with the first slide that last year we offered 10 courses to our students, from a variety of English to computer programming, some science courses, accounting, and business, marketing, occupations. When it came down to it, there was one class that was had enough students to go, and that was American Literature. Again, Mr. Lucas has been working with the staff to again go through the offerings that we'll be making this year in the registration handbook. And then a reminder that we had researched heavily what model of online to consider as we moved forward, and based on some strong research, especially done in Madison, correct, Nancy? That we went with what we call a hybrid model, meaning the students have face-to-face every other day and then the online every other day. So it's a blend of face-to-face and online. And Lori has some pretty strong opinions and information from her first, well, not quite even first semester, on what she's seeing as far as the hybrid model. Nancy will take us into the teacher training.
I think that's on. Is that on? So I had the honor of offering a 2-day training for teachers in the district on online learning. And we had 18 teachers participate. It was a great class, very fun, very enthusiastic teachers wanting to take the class for all sorts of purposes, not only to learn how to teach an online class. We had teachers that are trying to go paperless in their classroom and save money that way. We have teachers that just want to look for great audio podcast resources to add enrichment to their curriculum that they already offer in class. So we had great participation there. The course overview, what we covered, what are the realities of online learning, because it is a little bit different, and the essential components, what needs to be included in an online class. You can kind of see having instructions online, announcements, discussion boards, all sorts of types of resources for students to use. And then we also covered student readiness and motivation techniques, how to create online videos. So teachers learned how to create training videos for students, podcasts, looked at saving PowerPoints to HTML format so they could post them to the web, created blogs, wikis, and the tools that are built into eChalk too. The biggest suggestion was that it was a lot to pack in 2 days. We could have spent a lot more time just on all the how-tos, the learning how to do things, so more time to practice. And from learning with Lori's help, too, that we probably need to create a list of different types of files and what programs will open those files for students so that they know if they have this type of audio file, this media player will play it or that type of thing. So we can help ward off some of those technical problems that kids might have in online classes. And also more time for follow-up, to meet with the teachers again and follow up with training.
Okay, I'm Lori Harmon, and I am teaching the first online class at Hudson High School. It is American Literature. It's different in delivery, but it's not different in instruction. It's the same curriculum, or I should say it's not different in curriculum, it's the same curriculum, just a little different delivery. And I do have some things to say about the hybrid model. I really appreciate spending time with students and having that student-teacher interaction and student-student interaction. I realize they have that in other classes, but I think it's a good choice for high school students because I think they still need that teacher-student interaction and they need that peer-to-peer interaction in their classes. That's okay. One of the common questions that I get is, and both from teachers and from parents and from students and from my husband when I first took this on, was what do the students do when they're online? What are they doing? And in our situation, first hour class is either they're in the classroom with me or they're doing online work. And the question is, well, do they get up at 7 o'clock and get online at 7:40 and then jump in their car and run to school and attend their second hour class? And no, that's not the case. They simply have activities that they are to do, and it's up to them to schedule their time wisely. They have deadlines. They know what they have to get done and when. So this is an example of what my class page looks like, and I've made a movie using Camtasia. I didn't narrate it with audio. I'm narrating it here live to you today, but I'm showing you some files that students can get at, some resources that they can get to, and then if you go down a little bit further, I'm going to show you a discussion board, and that's where students are able to post discussions regarding specific topics that I will give them. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to hear from students who I don't normally or wouldn't normally hear from in class. This is the homework Dropbox where they can submit papers and things online, and I can receive things. So that's sort of what our students will see when they access our class page online. All right, some current online activities, things that we're doing now. We are, as I showed you, they're communicating via discussion board posts. And again, it's a wonderful way to hear from students. In fact, I just came this weekend off of a really great discussion board posting where I gave students, sort of gave them the reins and let them create their own and manage their own discussions in groups. And one of the things I recognized was oftentimes when we put students in groups and we say, here, work in this group, it's very difficult, as you know, to manage which students are doing which work, and is there one student that's taking all of the work and the other one's just kind of hanging on. A great thing that started to emerge was these students they're on the hook because they all have to contribute to that discussion board post, and I read them all. So they can't let just one person do all the work. They have to participate. And I was pleasantly surprised. I checked it at 11 o'clock Sunday night because I'm kind of a nerd that way. And when I went to bed, I said to my husband, "This is wonderful, all of these discussions." And he said, "Okay." And he just didn't get my level of excitement, but it was really a neat thing to see. Students can, as I showed there, submit homework via the homework Dropbox. They can also email me assignments, which is actually a great thing in regular classes. I have students who say, "My printer didn't work." And I say, "Well, guess what you can do? You can just email me the assignment, and I can either choose to print it off or grade it online." And so that's something that not only I can do in online, but teachers can do in every class. I'm able to create some kind of research, some web quests, and some internet scavenger hunts that they can do. They can complete online pre-tests and surveys. I like to do that with vocabulary so that they just kind of get to practice using the words, and then I test them later so that I sort of don't penalize them for learning. They can take those online, and they enjoy that. How do I deliver instruction? Well, the class page that I gave you an example of, where I can post the schedule, assignments, documents, updates, announcements, all of those things. Discussion board topics is another way to deliver instruction. Emails as well. And my students that get a really big kick out of the fact that I return emails pretty rapidly. And I had a student the other day, and she sent me an email, and it was less than a 24-hour period. It was after school, and I just didn't get it returned to her. And first thing the next day, she came in class and said, "Mrs. Harmon, you didn't email me back." So they get this expectation that, it's actually a really great way to develop personal relationships like that with your students, as far as, just being able to mentor them and deal with them from that perspective. And I just think it's a really positive kind of experience. Instruction, I can post documents to them and those kinds of things. I can narrate PowerPoint lectures, and that program that I showed you my class page with, I can narrate that with audio and record it, and I can actually deliver an entire lecture on the Puritans or the Jazz Age or whatever it is that I like to do. And I can provide educational movies. There are some movies that I am able to follow the copyright laws correctly and provide for the students to watch and deliver instruction that way. So there's kind of a multimedia experience with that. And here's an example of one of those. You won't have to watch the whole thing. There won't be a test.
The settlers who arrived in New England in the early 1600s were searching for religious tolerance, but ironically, they were intolerant of others.
So students can access, in any PowerPoint I could embed, audio, I can embed movies and all those kinds of things. I can give them a quiz later, and it's endless possibilities. For future online activities, we did learn about blogging and online journals in the class that Nancy taught us this summer. I haven't been able to quite get it to work, but I love the idea, especially because students can communicate with me one-on-one online journals, and it's a great way to do that, but I just haven't quite worked the bugs out of that yet. I would love to not only continue creating podcasts myself, but provide opportunities for students to create podcasts and maybe make old-time radio shows of novels and things like that. So I have some ideas. And also using other presentation medias as they become available and as we get those technologies. There's a lot of possibilities. It's endless. I think technology is rapidly advancing. What have I learned? The benefits, preparing students for future online learning opportunities. Many of the student teachers that I work with come to me and say, "Oh yeah, I took an online class," and it's something that's out there that most of them are going to experience at some point in their lives. So it's great for them to do it in a safe environment. One of the things that some students kind of learn the hard way, but they're coming around, is promoting independence, knowing that this assignment is due, and if you don't have it done when it's due, then you're responsible for checking that web page. Some of them are gone and sick, and they come back and they say, "Well, I was sick for 3 days," and I just kind of look at them and say, "Well, everything's online, so there it is." "Oh, yeah, it is." So kind of having them take more control of their own learning is a really positive thing. As I was saying earlier, it allows for those non-talkers. It gives them a more comfortable environment for discussion. I'm hearing from students that I would never have heard from otherwise, especially on those discussion boards, and it's a great thing. I mean, I hear from them and I think, wow, you never would have talked up in class. But they have some wonderful things to share, and it's a great venue for that. Again, it promotes greater expression of ideas, a higher level of participation. I find students looking at a question and then going off and researching it because they're on the computer, and then coming back and bringing in new information because it's all at their fingertips. And that's a great way for everybody to learn. It also, it is very important, enhances and improves writing and communication skills. We all have read emails and online things where we said, "Oh gosh, what was the tone of that? What did that person mean?" And I think it's a really, it's a valuable skill to develop and enhance in today's world because we're in that kind of a community. And overall, again, it helps students navigate, in an online world. I did take some surveys close to the beginning of the class to just kind of get a read on where the students were, how they felt about things, and I asked them, what are the benefits of this class? One student said, "You're more independent and can go at your own pace to a point without feeling rushed when everyone around you is getting done and you're not. Plus, you're able to do more work in an environment that you're more comfortable in, and being online helps me stay more concentrated just because it's on the computer." So that's just the voice of a student.
And then planning for our following school year, 2008 to 2009, Mr. Lucas is meeting with staff to finalize those courses that will be offered online for next year. We are going to change the look a little bit with the registration handbook. Last year we kind of had a list of the courses, like in that first slide, for students to know. We'll actually have now like American Lit with the regular American Literature online, so students can read the write-ups for both. And Lori's done a nice job of letting them kind of know a little bit about that responsibility and what to expect and what their capabilities must be as far as technology at home, so they have a little better understanding up front. We've been bouncing around, having a before and or after school meeting to students who express interest. So again, we can kind of go over, here are the basic criteria. This is what you need to think about to be successful in an online course. So again, we kind of have that information up front. And then again, we want to meet with counselors because they're key during that registration process, that they understand the online course and what kind of student would be successful and what's needed. So those are our initial thoughts on how to grow the program for the 08-09 school year. But as you can see, Lori is very excited about what she's doing, has worked very hard for both Nancy and Lori. That initial upfront, the summer piece before you even get to the students is so key. And that's the piece we'll probably try to expand for teachers who come on board now, is just even more upfront time for them to be successful in that classroom. And we're open for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board, Brian?
I just think it's awesome to see. So thanks, Lori, for kind of being our pioneer, and Nancy for all the support. I just think it's something that should be just kind of inner curriculum. I think it's a great way to for all the benefits up there. I think it's just a way we should be doing stuff. The hybrid model is great. I bet is there a little bit of a buzz to it now? I mean, do people now that we've been doing it for almost a semester? Has there been more people kind of talking about it, or is it?
Yes and no. I have students who will ask me, well, what classes do you teach? And I'll say, well, I teach American Lit Online. Oh, there's an online class? Well, how come I didn't know about that? So there's a little bit of buzz, but I think by the end of the year, it'll be more widespread.
Yeah, I think that, the before or after school thing, I think we did a little open house or something, both for faculty and for students. I bet the faculty would be interested, have you go through the same presentation with some of the faculty, and so they actually see what it's all about. I bet you get a bunch of people interested in it. So.
I will say, I can't remember if you said this in the presentation, Nancy, but one of the things that's really great about the eChalk program is it really lends itself to allow many teachers to employ a lot of the same kinds of things I'm doing online, just integrated into the regular classroom, which not only benefits the students because they're getting that exposure, but it also allows for that teacher to kind of play around a little bit and perhaps decide at some point, hey, I think I can do this. This isn't really beyond my reach. And so I know teachers are doing that. They're employing discussion boards. They're posting, as you were saying, doing paperless, getting a lot of things online. So it's something that we're moving forward on.
And just one more comment. So as we talk about, we talk about 2025 stuff before this meeting, and we hit themes like global connectedness. We talked about relationships. We talked about rigor. We talked about kind of expanding horizons. All that stuff's available when you do it online, right? Much more than out of a textbook and a lecture kind of format. So,
Good point.
Can I?
Cindy?
First, I want to thank you for your leadership. I think that it's a risky thing to sort of be the first one to step out and do something that's really different, and I just really applaud your willingness to do that, and it sounds like, you're the right person to do that because you have a lot of enthusiasm for it, and
Thank you.
I just really want to appreciate that, and also Nancy for your support of, this obviously is a group effort, but you guys are just awesome.
Nancy's been on call for me.
And students, I'm sure, too. But I do have another thing I want to say, and that is when I was an undergraduate many, many, many years ago, before we had desktop computers, I didn't want to take any computer science courses because I said I was going to work with people, not machines. And the first thing that I did for a real job out of college was spent 8 hours a day in front of a computer. And found that as a result of that, I do work with people. And so I really wanted to underscore this idea that a lot of people are afraid of moving into a technology-delivered, web-delivered environment because they think that we're isolating kids at home and that they're not getting relationships. And I think what you've described in terms of a classroom discussion or group project is an introvert dream. And really an opportunity to have better relationships and more voices. And I think that we really have to look at that as something that is to be embraced and celebrated. And the more we talk about that, the less fearful we all become as a society that we're all going behind our doors and shutting them and isolating from other people. So I appreciate the comments that you made about that. And then finally, a question for you. And the question is about student performance. So compared to students in other classes, in terms of their performance in the course material, how would you, you're talking about a fairly select group of students to begin with. They probably were high performers anyway.
Yes, I think a few of them are. We really had kind of an interesting collection of students that signed up. We had some who really didn't know what they were getting into, some who had certain expectations, and some who had no idea, but they were just game for anything. So I would say it's a good mix. It's not really just the high performers. I think it's a good mix all the way around, with the exception of a couple students who had some extreme absences and issues. I'd say it's about average compared to the other classes that I'm teaching. I teach the same class in the classroom. It's American Literature, the regular class curriculum. So I teach one of the curriculums online and one in the classroom full-time. And I'd say it's about the same. I think maybe even a little bit higher. Some of the responses that I'm getting are blowing me away. So I know that they just have more time to think about things. When you call on a student in class, they go, huh? When you post something, they have time to think and really come up with, and think about it, and really come up with what they want to say.
So the quality of these students' work is at least as good as?
At least as good as, if not really starting to move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy, Lori. I'm sorry, Mark.
That's okay, Dan. Just quick. First, I'm really very excited about this, and this certainly looks like a success. One question I had, and I know you mentioned, Lori, that the hybrid model is one that you personally favor, and I guess from my perspective too, it seems a blend is nice, especially for high school students. But what I'm wondering is from a teacher's perspective, what is the additional workload like? I mean, obviously you've got classroom presentations due as well as prepare a curriculum for online, and how does that affect your day?
Well, I do have an extra half of a prep time, which is sort of one of the deals that we struck last year when I decided to come on board with this. I will say that I'm going about a couple of weeks ahead just to try to kind of keep things going, because I am creating new delivery and new instruction for old curriculum, and then there's a lot of upfront time. I think after a year or two of doing it, it's going to go down. There is still that time, though, required when you have to communicate. You don't want to put a discussion board out there and not monitor it.
Right.
And so that there is time involved, and I did mention I was up at 11 o'clock on Sunday night checking that. And I didn't have to, but I felt like I needed to, and I think I did sort of set some expectations for the students that I was somewhat accessible, and they actually will email me on the weekends, so through the school, website. So it is a little bit more work. Definitely at the beginning. I would say the first couple of years. That's why when we first presented this to the curriculum committee last week, we said, you know what, it's really, I think, a better situation to have a teacher sort of ease into it. And if a teacher is interested in doing it, a really good way to do that, I think, is to spend a year or so just sort of playing around with starting to put some things online, starting to kind of ease their way into it. I did put some time in this summer, quite a lot of time. I could have used more, but that's the nature of things. So a lot of time, but I think it's upfront time, and once it's in place, it'll be, much better.
Right, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll look forward to hearing future reports. We'll move on to the final report of the 07-08 district goals update. Mary?
We have the opportunity with our goals to come back to you with regular summaries and updates so that you can see the attention that and effort that is being given to each of these goals throughout the school year and by almost all of our staff. So starting with the first goal, developing a system of higher expectations for student learning and performance results. This is a multi-year goal, and you have the information in front of you. I'm not going to go through each point, but I do want to summarize some of those important points. The 3 pages that you have in regard to our goals does not reflect the amount of work that is being expended throughout the district on each of these goals, but it really is a brief summary information about the goals themselves. In this particular goal, we have looked at efforts at the school level, at the district level, and the administrative level. And I've identified things that are completed and those that are progressing, although the progressing side could be a whole lot longer than you see right here. At the school level, certainly the schools are really focusing on their SMART goals. And you'll remember the presentation to you in October where the principals came and presented their school SMART goals. So they have been spending staff time, early release, or late starts on their SMART goals. You don't see here the specifics that are occurring at each of the buildings, and just for an example, at EP Rock, there's a data wall, and it doesn't say anything about that, but Amy's continuing to track and monitor data and put that up on the wall, and so that the building can celebrate that and see where they are. At the middle school, they're working very hard on creating common assessments, so that work is continuing. And at the high school, I know Ed, every time I meet with him, he has a stack of data in regard to grades. across all courses throughout the school, and teachers are mining that data and looking at that and using that to make decisions about their instruction. So certainly, those are just examples, and there are other examples at all of our other schools, but that kind of work really isn't reflected in the specifics that you see on this page. At the one other thing I want to point out is a grant at the school level that the Education Foundation just made to send middle school and high school teams with administrators and teachers to the 208 Model Schools Conference. This is a conference that we've identified where there are best practice schools that are presenting, and very beneficial for us to attend and have representatives and learn from other districts who are involved in this work of improving student learning. At the district level, you have seen the professional development plan, and certainly that's supporting the implementation of best practices into each classroom. There's information here about site visits that Sandy has gone on and identified sites in Wisconsin and in Minnesota of high-performing districts. And as we are into an adoption for a new science curriculum, we are looking at what those districts are doing and considering their practices for adoption as part of our efforts to improve student learning in science. And I know there has been some excitement after those site visits, so the learning certainly is continuing through that kind of work. The District Curriculum Council has modified our curriculum improvement process to include development of common assessments in each of the curriculum areas as they are adopted. So that will be ongoing work that we believe is very important and will create data for us to make decisions. We have realigned our Title I services for reading at the elementary level based on need across the district. And so that has been a big effort that Sandy and the principals have been involved in. Response to intervention is moving forward. That training is occurring. I know teachers across the district, I continue to hear about response to intervention or a pyramid of interventions, and this is really support to students at various levels as they need it in their learning. The last district level notation there is about coaching training that occurred when we sent our literacy coaches and Peg Shoemaker to the National Staff Development Conference. And this was a wonderful opportunity for them to actually get coaching themselves, and by very experienced, trained coaches. And so these kind of national opportunities are things we can't replicate in the district, but yet they have high value for our staff. At the administrative level, the administrative leadership team has read and discussed and continues to refer to two books, Good to Great, of course, and then Robert Marzano's book and SMART Goal books as well. So those are things that are continuing. Turning to the next goal, unless you have a question on this one specifically. Okay, the next goal is complete construction of Rivercrest Elementary School and plan for its opening in the fall of 2008. The brief, almost it looks like a paragraph here, certainly doesn't represent all the work that's occurring at Rivercrest. It's a very brief summary, but we're working on attendance boundaries. You've seen that. We're working on transfer and reassignment process of teachers and support staff, thanks to Nancy's work. Rivercrest logo. Construction, as we heard this evening, is continuing. There is a committee that meets regularly. This is a planning committee, and that's on page 3 or page 28 in our packet. You can see a number of items listed that are actions and timelines, 21 things, in fact, and this list keeps growing. There's a planning committee of administrators, Nancy Sweet, Tim Erickson, Sandy Kovach, Barbara Poon, Peg Shoemaker, Pat Hodges, Jim Stayskull, and Tracy Habish-Aline. Each have responsibility for these areas to move forward, and so we meet regularly to talk about the progress, what are the next steps, and what needs to happen, and and, assign deadlines as well. So those are things that are continuing. Turning to the next goal, unless you have a question on this one specifically. Okay, goal, the next goal is complete construction of Rivercrest Elementary School and plan for its opening in the fall of 2008. The The construction team also meets with Hoffman representatives and talks about our progress and resolves any issues that happen to be and makes decisions to move us forward. Questions about Rivercrest? The next goal is guide the strategic and long-range planning process of HSD 2025 to completion of Phase 1 by the end of the school year. And I won't spend any more time on that since we spent time during the work session and you have seen the progress, and it is continuing to progress, and we're very pleased with that progress to date. Thanks to Brian's leadership and Tracy's leadership as well. And the last goal is develop a process for consideration and decision-making of long-range space for learning needs for grades 6 through 12. And we have taken a few steps to get that process really started. Certainly, you had a work session in September, and we've hired Hazel Reinhardt, who is working on enrollment projections and also a housing study that will be part of those projections. And we anticipate that she will report to you in February with both the enrollment and the housing studies. You also approved grades 6 through 12 space for learning assumptions. We've looked at consideration of physical plant assessment of the high school, middle school, Hudson Prairie complex, and that was sent back to the Facilities and Grounds Committee, who has authorized moving forward with an assessment of facilities for energy conservation and savings by focus on energy, and that's a first phase of that physical plant assessment. We are starting to look, as you heard this evening, at middle school short-term space for learning solutions, and we'll be moving that forward as well. So if you have any questions about any of the goals, I'd be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mary? Okay. Thank you, Mary, for that report. We'll move on to topics for action, consent items, including expenditures in the amount of $3,210,957.74.
The consent items, are you going to do them all together?
Pardon?
Will you do all the consent items together?
I will.
Then I would like to be excused, if you don't mind, for conflict
Okay.
of interest.
Okay. Thanks, Cindy.
Mr.
And I
President,
think, Tom, you
also,
had indicated, too, that you would prefer.
Yeah, I'd like to make a statement to that
Okay.
regard, too. While I don't believe this is a conflict of interest, I do want to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Therefore, I'd like to not participate or be present or vote on any matters relating to the expenditures to the YMCA. And I see that there are items on the consent agenda that involve expenditures to the YMCA, so I'd like to excuse myself from this part of the meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. So if notation can be made that Cindy Crimmins and Tom Holland have removed themselves from the auditorium, and we'll move on with those. With a motion, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent items, including the amount that I just stated.
So move to make a motion to approve the consent items.
Okay, we have a motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Dick. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved 5-0. I think those individuals can come back in if someone... We'll just wait a moment before they return. Thanks, Cindy and Tom, and we'll go back to the topics for action. Appointment of deputy clerk for spring election. I believe, Mary, you're going to address that one?
Yes, I would like to recommend that Tim Erickson serve as deputy clerk for the spring election on April 1st, and also for the primary election if one is necessary.
Okay. Tim, you're agreeable to serving in that capacity?
Yes.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion for the approval of Tim Erickson
Also move.
Second.
A motion by Dick, second by Cindy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. The Rivercrest fiber optic contract, and then, Tim, do you also want to cover the playground equipment?
Right, I'll cover both of those items.
Thank you.
On page 32 of your packet are the results of the Rivercrest Elementary fiber optic bids. And this essentially is an interconnection of the fiber optics from EP Rock to the new Rivercrest site. These bids include all material, engineering, permit acquisition, construction, splicing, testing, and documentation of the system. We did receive a total of 2 bids, one from TD&I Cable Maintenance out of Lakeland for $98,000, and one from Telecom Construction out of Clearwater, Minnesota for $139,000. And these did go before the Facilities and Grounds Committee. They were recommending the approval. We did have just one clarification from TD&I Cable on inclusion of permit costs, and they did indicate that that bid did include permit costs. So the recommendation would be to approve the TD&I Cable Maintenance bid.
Okay. And Tim, you noted that that was the low bid,
Yes.
98,000, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of that.
Also move to award the fiber optic bid contract to TDI and Cable Maintenance, Lakeland, Minnesota, the amount of $98,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Tom. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Just a
Oh,
quick
I'm sorry,
note.
Mark.
No problem. Is there a reason that we got so few bids? I mean, 2 bids seems, I don't know, there's just not many firms providing these?
I would direct
services?
that question to Mr. Erickson, and we did ask that question at the Facilities and Grounds.
Well, we did go through the process of advertising, and Nancy Toll and I worked together on putting an RFP out. I don't know if Nancy is here. I don't think she is, but I don't have an explanation other than we did advertise it. Sometimes you receive, in some things you'll see we've received many bids, and others we just don't receive many. I don't know if we have a limited market out there for fiber optic installation or not.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, thanks,
curious.
Mark.
Good question, though.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Tim, do you want to continue with the playground?
Sure.
permit?
Next item is the approval of the playground equipment, and this is from Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground, also known as Game Time Incorporated. And this is a project that Jim Staskell and Pat Hodges worked on, and they were very instrumental in getting a corporate grant from Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground in the amount of $56,938. And they did look at 3 different companies and looked at design of the playground equipment and the fit to our site, and then also cost. And in the end, Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground fit the criteria, and with the grant was really a very low-cost provider for this playground equipment. We do have a smaller piece for early childhood. We will have some assembly costs here and some preparation work for the grounds, but what you have in front of you is for the playground equipment. And that total is $78,114.25. So it also was reviewed at the Facilities and Grounds meeting, and so we'd recommend that you approve the quotation here from Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And I presume with both of these, we're within our budget?
That is correct.
Okay. Any comments, questions for Tim? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the playground equipment.
Could I just ask a clarification question first? Tim, does this include the early childhood, or is that additional?
Right. The early childhood is an additional piece, which it will be much less than what we're looking at here. And like I mentioned, assembly and then preparation is also in addition. This is just for the equipment itself.
Just one quick question. The grant, where did that grant come from?
The grant came from Minnesota-Wisconsin Playground, from the corporation. It's a corporate grant that they award to different entities that purchase their product.
Okay.
To needy school districts.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval of this playground equipment.
Move to approve the playground equipment.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to item for Nancy Sweet regarding the 0708 elementary gifted and talented staffing request. Nancy?
This particular staffing request was considered by the Personnel Committee and was recommended for board approval. It is 4.2 FTE teacher of gifted and talented, an increase for that part-time teacher at Holton Elementary because of student needs and numbers that exceeded expectations on that site. The approximate cost is $5,000 for the remainder of the school year.
Nancy? Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Clarification, this is just a one-year contract, though, for the remainder of the school year only?
It is just for the remainder of the school year.
Okay. Any questions, comments?
Dan, I have a question. Is that contract for a staff member already on?
Yes.
Under contract? Okay.
Yes. This particular person is a part-time employee and does serve gifted and talented students at Holton and North Hudson. Travels between the two.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a comment.
Brian?
I asked Nancy in the Personnel Committee, we talked about this briefly, if any of her special ed funds from the state go to gifted and talented, and the answer was no. Just make a statement that I think we have to meet students at the levels they're at, right, and set rigorous curriculum and high expectations for all of our students. And so I just think it's really important for us as a board to provide focus both on every level of student, right? Those with special needs from developmental cognitive disabilities up through our Gifted Talented program. I think it's important that we invest our dollars in that to make sure we can continue to raise the bar for all of our students.
Good comment. Cindy?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree that our gifted and talented population is also a population with special needs.
Oh, good point. Okay, again, this is for addition of a .2 FTE teacher of gifted and talented at Holton. Entertain a motion for approval.
I would like to move that we approve the request for an addition of 0.2 FTE teacher for the gifted and talented program at Holton for the remainder of this school year.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second by Brian. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Last topic for action is the 0708 agreement with River Falls School District for special transportation. We have Barbara Rabone taking this one.
We already had transportation going to this location, and the school district of River Falls recently had a student that entered their district that it's appropriate for placement. So they asked if they could join us. What it basically will do is defer some of our costs.
Okay. Any questions for Barbara? Cindy?
I'd like to move that we approve this contract. Deferred
Okay.
costs.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion is approved. We'll move on to committee reports. Personnel Committee is first, followed by Dick in the Facilities and Grounds. Mark?
All right. Thank you, Dan. The Personnel Committee met last week. Amongst the things on our agenda was a discussion of the Willow River and North Hudson principal selection process, and we took a look at and basically endorsed the procedure that's outlined. As you all recall, we have school managers in those positions this year, and we have steps and a timeline for considering of those. And in addition, if perhaps a school manager is not selected to be a principal, then the process would continue with an outside search to fill those principal positions. So the timeline has been endorsed for that process. We also talked somewhat about the staff, the challenges we've had in our district this fall. Obviously, we've had far too many personal tragedies involving students, the large fire at EP Rock, and just some discussion about being aware of the impact that this has on staff, emotionally, psychologically. I mean, these are really major events, and just some discussion that to be aware of how this can impact the environment in the school, and that we're all cognizant of that. It's been a very challenging fall for everybody involved. Along that note, just as kind of editorial comment to myself, I certainly want to extend a hearty thanks to administrators and staff that were so directly involved in all these situations that we've had this fall. I know I can't even imagine the difficulty that this has been and the time involved, and so my personal thanks. Along that line, another item the Personnel Committee considered was some of the administrator, with the vacation days, many administrators had to obviously put in some extra time and going above and beyond the call of duty, and so therefore some flexibility may be needed with regard to some of these vacation days that haven't been able to be taken. And the Personnel Committee absolutely endorsed, I would term it, giving the maximum flexibility to our administrators for the use of these days. And once again, I commend them on doing what needed to be done. And so I think that it's something they certainly have earned. Next up was the elementary gifted and talented staffing request, which we've just approved. I don't know if any more needs to be said about that. We talked about that. And lastly, we discussed and approved a draft for the support staff reassignment process for Rivercrest Elementary. Again, outlining a series of timelines and procedures for support staff and reassignment. And I guess the only comment I'd make is that the district is going to make every effort to balance both experience with those staff personal requests. And last but not least, we did have a closed session to discuss the bargaining of the teacher's contract.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And as I look out at Amy, I also know, that EP Rock has had, a special dose of these tragedies. And so thank you, Amy, for the work you've done and your staff. And it's truly been, a group effort, and we will persevere. But those losses have been difficult for all of the community. Any questions for Mark? Okay. We'll move on to facilities and grounds. Dick?
Well, I will quickly run through and try and summarize about a 2-hour meeting in maybe 1 minute. So Kurt Thiel is in front of us tonight talking about Rivercrest construction on time, on budget. I go by that site every day, and looks wonderful. I think, again, I keep emphasizing, I think it's going to be an asset that this community will be proud of. We did review 2007-2008 project list as prepared by Tim and his staff. We did forward to this board that you saw tonight the recommendation on the fiber optic contract, playground equipment contract. Talked at length about security throughout the district at our sites. I think you'll see a recommendation coming to this board in the very near future on possible architectural studies as it relates to access to the buildings, and some architectural studies I think that we can accomplish to at least maybe set a direction for increased security at all of our facilities. And then the final item we talked about was another item that the board had seen, which was the physical plant assessment. And I know a lot of questions are raised, so I think we're going to redefine that at the facilities committee level and bring that back for consideration. I think you'll hear terms like energy audit and maybe proceeding a little bit more slowly to, I think, talk about some cost-benefit, cost analysis issues, return on investment, et cetera, with that physical plant assessment. And I want to thank the other two members on the facilities committee with Erica and Tom, and good committee and getting a lot of work done.
Thank you, Dick. Any questions for Dick and the work of the committee? Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, citizens' request to speak. Do we have any requests? No? Okay. Then I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, for the purpose of discussion of bargaining of the teacher's contract.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Bell, aye.
Crimmins, aye.
Chernahoy, aye.
Minnick, aye.
Holland, aye.
Sherrier, aye.
Kaiser shot aye.
Good. Motion's approval. Thanks, everyone.